Stay frosty and head over to EasyMut.com for the cheapest MUT coins on the market. And when I say cheapest, I mean it. We're talking 1 million coins for around 40 bucks. Use code DIRECTOR for 5% off. Yo, what up, brothers? It's the Director. Chargers fans, the first preseason game is come and gone. We saw a lot of amazing stuff in that game and in training camp. I'm in full football mode right now, man. Chargers football is here. The regular season's just around the corner. And I got thinking to myself, what's something cool that we could talk about as we're getting close to actual kickoff? And you know what? A lot has changed with the Chargers over the course of this offseason. Honestly, right now, we're starting to get our first real sneak peek of what all these changes are going to amount to. But I wanted to break down the team by groups: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver, then on defense, defensive line, linebacker, etc., etc. And I kind of wanted to see the stark difference. Is it better or worse? Is that group better than it was last season? So today we're going to be breaking down the Chargers roster and comparing it to 2020 to see if it is indeed better or worse. In the comment section, you guys can let me know your predictions as well for each unit, and also let me know some of your dark horse like next level players in 2021. Who's going to take the leap and be that diamond in the rough with the Chargers in this new scheme and new system? Okay, one thing I didn't put here on the list, one of the biggest improvements that the Chargers made this offseason was coaching. You know, Brandon Staley, all the new coordinators and stuff like that. The Chargers already look better on that front. Let's take a look at some of the players as well. Before we do get started, guys, as a reminder, I don't have it set it up yet, but we got a giveaway just around the corner for my subscribers. I'm giving away the signed Antonio Gates jersey. Once it's set up, all you guys got to do is hit a link in the description. It should be very easy. But if you want a leg up right now, make sure to hit that like, sub, bell notification, leave a nice comment, etc., etc. And of course, I'm taking care of my awesome crew members as well. I got my hands on this LaDainian Tomlinson. It's pretty hot. It's pretty nice. All you guys got to do to be entered for this one is be a member of my crew. I'll let you guys know when this giveaway is up and running, but it should be a lot of fun. Guys, again, this is a thank you from me to you. Thank you guys so much for your support here on the channel. And with that, let's get into this one. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub if you guys do enjoy this Chargers content, not just for the giveaways, but you like me too, right? The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action. The 2021 Chargers, are they better or worse compared to the 2020 Chargers? This will be a prediction video. Now, we got a lot of position groups to go over, so we're just going to jump right into this one. Let's start with the offensive line. I was going to start with quarterback at first, but I was like, man, this offensive line carries so much positive consequences for the rest of the offense. We got to do them first, okay? Offensive line containing Rashawn Slater, Matt Filer, Corey Linsley, Adea Bushi, and Brian Bulaga. That's a solid starting five, right? The depth is definitely where I'm going to have some concerns, but the main focus of the offseason was obviously fixing this offensive line. Signing Corey. If you guys go back and watch my videos, I was obsessed with the idea of the Chargers getting Corey Linsley. I was like, dude, if we sign one free agent this offseason, it's got to be the best center in football. And lo and behold, the Chargers did just that. And honestly, guys, the signing of Corey Linsley cannot be understated. In a phase for a football team when they're rebuilding their offensive line, you want that leader in that middle of the line to help get everything glued together, all these new pieces, new chemistry, and the communication between center and quarterback is going to be very important, which Corey Linsley has a lot of experience in. But the Chargers didn't stop there. They went and grabbed Rashawn Slater, Adea Bushi, Matt Filer, all of these guys being very, very impressive additions. And then additionally, they did draft Brandon Hymus, who looked really, really solid in his first preseason game as well. So with the worst line in the league last season, I think it is obvious that this unit and this group is vastly better than it was in 2020. This will probably be one of the biggest stark differences you see between the 2020 Chargers and the 2021 Chargers. And like I said before, this is going to carry a lot of positive consequences to the rest of this offense. So with that, let's move into our second position here, and that's, of course, going to be quarterback Justin Herbert. We got Chase Daniel, Easton Stick. I think AJ Costello was cut by the time making this video too, so it's just between those three at this point. Now, we know what we've got out of Justin Herbert, right? I mean, offensive rookie of the year last season. He was absolutely stellar. I'm pretty sure I saw Patrick Mahomes, sweating beads on the side of the on the sidelines during his game in week 2 last season. The league has been put on notice from Justin Herbert. He's the next big thing, and the Chargers definitely hit a home run last season with their draft in 2020. But lo and behold, there's a lot that's improved with Justin Herbert over the course of the offseason. You guys remember in 2020, he didn't really have an offseason. We had the pandemic going on. He was slated as a backup for a reason. We had to throw that to Anthony Lynn once in a while, right? And he didn't really practice with the ones. As a matter of fact, I said this several times before, but Keenan Allen hadn't even caught a pass from Justin Herbert until week 2 of the regular season when he was thrusted into action. So Justin Herbert, we know what we've got, but how has he improved? Well, again, he's got a full offseason now. He's practicing with the ones. He's in a brand new system with Joe Lombardi, which is going to definitely benefit him. And of course, the reason we showed the offensive line at the top, he's going to be going from one of the worst offensive lines in the league, I think the worst, to one of the better offensive lines in the league. Honestly, I see the Chargers' new offensive line as being a top half unit in the league, maybe even a top 10. We'll have to wait and see. I think it really depends on health. But either way, the Chargers' quarterback situation has been vastly improved. As for the backups in Chase Daniel and Easton Stick, I think Stick only makes the top 53 if the Chargers decide to roster 3 quarterbacks. I think more than likely he'll be signed to the practice squad, but still very, very nice quarterback room out here. Obviously, the Chargers have a strength in that category, and it's one that's definitely been nourished through the offseason with our brand new coaching and schemes, and honestly, throwing passes to his number 1 wide receiver. I think that's pretty important in the offseason, Mr. Anthony Lynn. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the running back situation. This might be one that some Chargers fans are a little bit concerned about. A lot of people see Austin Eckler as strictly a receiving running back, which honestly he can be. It's the best facet of his game. And a lot of people want to see the Chargers sign a bigger back, Todd Gurley, somebody with the stature of a Derrick Henry. But I don't know if the Chargers need that at this point, right? I think right now, let's first talk about Eckler. I think Eckler is a direct beneficiary of Joe Lombardi signing with the team, right? Joe Lombardi, coming from the New Orleans Saints, is going to bring a lot with him in his offensive scheme from the Saints, and that Saints offense featured Alvin Kamara, and there's a lot of similarities between Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler that he's going to benefit from in the way that he's utilized. There's also the obvious uptick in his the productivity of each carry because of the new offensive line. That's going to be pretty big for Austin Eckler. So I think he's locked in, one of the best running backs in the league, especially at what he does at receiving back. Let's talk a little bit about the backups as well, right? We got Jackson, we got Kelly, we got Roundtree, we got Neighbors. There's a lot of guys back there, right? Neighbors being the fullback, by the way. I think the Chargers, after week 2 of the preseason, will likely cut one of our running backs. After the week 3 of the preseason, at the very latest. I think Justin Jackson is the obvious second best talent on this roster. Joshua Kelly, dudes, I was really hoping Joshua Kelly would show us more in that first preseason game. He got opportunities, but when it came down to it, there was one name that really stood out that he's going to have trouble fending off in camp, and that's Larry Roundtree. Like I said, Larry Roundtree, I'll fully admit, I'll eat crow here. I wasn't the biggest believer in him because I didn't really know his role with this team. But after seeing his performance in week 1 of the preseason behind not the best version of the Chargers offensive line, I was very, very, very impressed. So Jackson and Kelly are going to have to fight against Roundtree in order to make the roster. I think Kelly or Jackson does get cut, and I am leaning at Kelly, or towards Kelly at this point. So my verdict is that this is definitely a slightly better running back room. I would say more likely the same, but with upside due to the offensive line and scheme. All right. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers. Okay, this is a unit that a lot of Chargers fans were hoping maybe we see a signing or a draft, in the offseason to help bolster it. And we did see that with signing of Josh Palmer, or a drafting of Josh Palmer in the draft this last May. Now, the Chargers wide receiver room right now is pretty packed, right? We got Keenan Allen, we got Mike Williams, we got Tyron Johnson, Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, and then a flurry of other backup guys, right? I think at the very top level of things with the Chargers wide receiver group, Keenan and Mike are an obvious top-tier duo in the league, right? So we don't even have to worry about those guys, although there is a conversation to be had about Mike Williams after the 2021 season. For this year, as long as he stays healthy, him and Keenan make one of the top duos in the league, right? Backups, though, and the guys a little bit lower on the depth chart is where this team gets really, really exciting. Tyron Johnson, Billy, and Josh Palmer have had a fantastic camp and then an equally fantastic first week in the preseason, with Palmer dominating that game versus the Rams. I think a lot of us expected to see something from Josh Palmer in that game, but what we saw knocked a lot of our socks off. And I think Palmer has a good opportunity to climb the depth chart, climb that roster, and become a more featured wide receiver as the season and as his career goes on. I think he's got a very, very bright future. As for Tyron Johnson, he's got his role with this team. He's become a better route runner. He's definitely got the speed, much like Jalen Guyton, who I'm hoping makes the squad as well. The backups after that being Reed, Hill, Hurst, Moore, Prohl. Those guys are likely going to have to battle for the last spot on that roster. And right at this moment, I'm leaning towards Joe Reed because he does have some upside with the special teams. But still, the wide receivers, my verdict right now with the drafting of Josh Palmer and the development of Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton, I'm going to say this wide receiver group is better than they were in 2020. And again, they're going to be able to practice with Justin Herbert, have some more time to get open with that improved offensive line. I think that offensive line being the top priority for the Chargers this offseason was the most intelligent thing they can do, because you're seeing the trickling effect through this entire offense, at least in this video. Next up, the last group we got to talk about in offense before moving on to the defense is tight end, okay? The Chargers tight end situation featuring Jared Cook, Donald Parham, Trey McKitty, and I'm going to throw Stephen Anderson in there as a guy that's likely to make the team as well. I do need to start off in this position by saying losing Hunter Henry was a blow to this team, okay? Hunter Henry versus, a Jared Cook. Hunter Henry is the better, more complete tight end because he does have a lot of upside in blocking as well. But I do think it was a necessary blow for this team. We've already heard reports for the New England Patriots that Hunter Henry has been hurt. I love Hunter Henry. I wish him the most success in New England, but that is probably one of the deciding factors in letting him go this offseason. You enter Jared Cook right now, who I think has what it takes to hold down the fort from a receiving perspective, right? He's one of the better receiving tight ends in the league, and it should provide Justin Herbert some consistency in the productivity from that position. And not to mention, they've seen some crazy chemistry during camp. We haven't had the opportunity to see him preseason yet, but I have to imagine that this is going to be a combo that is utilized quite a bit. And again, Joe Lombardi, likely the guy that brought him into this offense, does know how to use him, having played with him or used him in New Orleans in the previous years of his career. So there's a lot of upside with the tight ends. Not to mention, I gotta mention Donald Parham, who did see 2 targets, 2 receptions, in that preseason game. He's nothing if not efficient, right? Donald Parham saw so few targets in 2020, but he made the most of it, right? He had over 100 yards, I think 2 or 3 touchdowns. I do see him as being a very efficient tight end who I hope to see more work this season. As for Trey McKitty, the rookie, I think he was brought in to be more of a blocking tight end. I think you're going to see him on the field a lot because of that trait. And then with the backups, Stephen Anderson, Campen Moyer, Anderson, Sokol, I'm thinking maybe one of those guys makes the roster, and I'm going to lean towards Stephen Anderson. So I still think the tight end position is pretty good. My verdict is going to be it's a little worse than last season because, honestly, Hunter Henry is a little bit better, rounded tight end. But I do think it's a work in progress, right? Jared Cook's only on the team for 1 season. I think the Chargers have their eyes set on maybe a new tight end coming in, or the development of a Trey McKitty or a Donald Parham as the year goes on, okay? Next up, let's get into the defense. I know the video is already pretty long already. I don't care, man. We're taking a deep look at this Chargers team as we get closer to kickoff. Let's start with the defense and the defensive line, featuring Linval Joseph, Justin Jones, Jerry Tillery, Christian Covington, Cortez Broughton, Braden Feheko, Forrest Merrill, and Chris Okoye. I think there's a couple more names to throw in there. The biggest reason I'm featuring this unit first is because of the change of scheme, right? The Chargers changed from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4, which means a lot of these guys that were playing defensive tackle are now playing defensive end, and now we are heavily featuring and depending on Linval Joseph at nose tackle in this formation as well, right? The first thing I'll say about this group is that this may have been one of the most surprising groups in the first preseason game. Covington, Fayoko. Those guys looked really, really solid. And these are our depth guys, right? These are the guys behind Linval Joseph. With Linval Joseph in the game, it's a completely different story too. I think Linval Joseph is definitely a few steps ahead of all of the guys, all the remainder defensive tackles on our roster. But as long as he can stay healthy, I think the Chargers, as far as the D-line is looking right now, look pretty solid because of the performance we saw from a lot of our backups and stuff in that first preseason game. They looked really solid. They were getting after the quarterback. They were rushing the quarterback. I think it was Justin Jones in the offseason saying that he was excited to actually get after the quarterback this season and not just focus so solely on stopping the run. There's a lot of things, a lot of upside with all of these guys on the defensive line. And Jones and Tillery will also likely improve being in a 3-4 defensive scheme. So I'm going to say this defensive line is actually slightly better. And I'm going to say it's because of that depth and because of the scheme on defense that we're seeing right now. So defensive line on the uptick, man. I'm very excited to see what they've got going into the season. Next up, let's talk about a position. Let's not get the name wrong, okay? We don't want Brandon Staley knocking down doors in our local neighborhoods, right? Let's talk about the position of edge, okay? Featuring Joey Bosa, Uchenna Nwosu, Kyler Fackrell, Chris Rumpf, and then a couple other guys as backups as well. Another really impressive thing that we saw from the game versus the Rams this preseason was the pressures. The pressures was the star of the Chargers defense in week 1, even without the starters. Imagine that game with Joey Bosa in there for a couple of drives, Uchenna Nwosu, these other guys. It would have been pretty nasty. I really do think it's because Brandon Staley has a certain way of putting these players in positions of favorable matchups, a position to succeed. So we saw a lot of guys really, really shine in that game, specifically when it came to generating pressure. That's something that the Chargers have not been known for doing for a very, very long time. And I think it's time we start seeing the potential of a Joey Bosa unlocked on that front, right? And even in Uchenna Nwosu, Kyler Fackrell, all those other guys. Now, one big thing did change over the offseason. The Chargers decided to let go, not re-sign a Melvin Ingram, right? So enter in his spot, Uchenna Nwosu. And I think the scheme, again, the reason I mentioned it earlier is I think that could generate, or that could result in the same level of play. Very, very high from Uchenna Nwosu. We've seen a lot of flashes out of him for very many years. I do think he has what it takes to be very consistent opposite Joey Bosa. I think that's the name of the game for Brandon Staley with this new scheme, right? Let's give Joey Bosa as many opportunities to not get double and triple teamed all the time, give him some favorable matchups, and then these other guys are going to generate some pressure as well. Again, the same kind of work he did with Leonard Floyd back with the Los Angeles Rams. I see a lot of that working and being utilized with the Los Angeles Chargers as well. So the biggest thing is scheme change, though. This will help all players across the board. So I'm going to say my verdict is better due to scheme. Even with the loss of Melvin Ingram, this unit does look a lot better. Next up, another group that really shocked the world in the first preseason game for the Chargers. Let's talk a little bit about the linebackers, okay? This features Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquill, the return of Drew Tranquill, Kaiser White, Nick Neiman, and Amin Ogbongbemiga. Okay, we're going to call him Ogbong in our videos, okay? Now, this is one of the most shocking improvements this offseason, I would say, especially in this first preseason game, right? Kaiser White was definitely turning heads. There was a screenplay that he definitely blowed up. He was looking really, really solid in coverage, and that's really what he was brought on this team to do, is be a coverage linebacker. But maybe he's going to be utilized a little bit more efficiently under Brandon Staley. Okay, White is definitely impressing in camp and on the field right now. The return of Drew Tranquill as well. We got to see a lot of sample sizes of him on Saturday in that preseason game. He was actually blitzing quite a bit. You guys saw a lot of different plays where Drew Tranquill was getting after the quarterback. That's pretty huge, man. We saw way more blitzes involving the linebackers, the interior line, the middle linebackers in preseason than I've seen in a very, very long time from the Chargers previous 2021. The combination of Murray and Tranquill should absolutely flourish in that situation, right? Especially Kenneth Murray, right? We've seen a lot in college of Kenneth Murray, you know, generating pressure, getting after the quarterback. I think we're about to see a lot more of that and in a lot more efficient manner from Brandon Staley. I'm very, very, very high on Kenneth Murray this season. I think he's going to be one of the biggest head turners of the season on the Chargers defense, okay? And that's a defense featuring a lot of really, really good players, okay? As far as depth is concerned, Neiman, Ogbong, those guys are very good. I would say Ogbong is better in the run defense than he is in the pass. But all in all, I'll say that this linebacker unit looks vastly better than it did last season. I would say with the return of Drew Tranquill, the development of Kenneth Murray, who had the most tackles in Chargers history by a rookie, this is going to be a unit that I think's utilized a lot more than we've seen in the past. The Chargers of the past would prefer to come out and nickel and dime, get more, defensive backs out there. I think the Chargers of the future really utilize their linebackers, and guys like Kenneth Murray and Drew Tranquill will be allowed to shine, okay? Next up, guys, last of two here, we're going to talk about the cornerbacks a little bit, okay? The cornerbacks featuring Chris Harris Jr., Michael Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Brandon Facyson, and Ryan Smith, then again a couple other guys as far as depth. Okay, so the first thing I'll mention is that Casey Hayward was let go from the Chargers. Okay, it seemed like he was hitting his decline. He was getting a little bit older, so he was cut from the team. And although a lot of us love Casey Hayward, it might have been a necessary cut for the squad. Now enter Asante Samuel Jr., who takes the same number, looks absolutely incredible. One of my favorite plays from the preseason game was him blowing up. It looked like a pass underneath, maybe even a screen. He blew that man up. And then the very next play, he blew up another wide receiver, body slamming him to the floor. Looked absolutely insane. Asante Samuel is going to play a lot bigger than he is. He's going to generate a lot of playmaking opportunities for himself, and I think he's going to be a standout defensive player for the Chargers in 2021. So as far as Asante Samuel Jr. is concerned, I'm not worried at all. I'm very excited to see what he does on the field. As for Michael Davis, who I think is a very capable defensive back, he might find some challenges playing the cornerback 1 or 2 positions, just the outside cornerback position, as a featured guy this year. He did have some flashes last season. I do think he's proven himself to be a very capable defensive back, maybe a featured cornerback too, but he's going to be asked to cover some of the better guys in the league this season, and we're going to hope that he can hold down the fort there, okay? Because I think the Chargers still have some more figuring out to do with this position group in the coming seasons, especially with Chris Harris Jr. likely walking after next year, right? Chris Harris Jr. is our best corner as of right now, though. Let's not, mix things up there. I think he's going to be just fine with the Chargers this year. He's going to be positionless, playing inside, outside, up, top, down, low. He's going to be, I think, utilized in a similar fashion to Derwin James this year, right? But again, my biggest concern for this position group is definitely depth. Facyson has, made some headlines and stuff in preseason and camp, but I need to see more of that on the field. As far as, Campbell and these other guys, Ryan Smith, who is going to be a special teams contributor, we'll have to wait and see with that. So I'm going to say cornerbacks, though. With the entrance of Asante Samuel, who's already looking to show signs of being a dominant corner in the league, I'm going to say it's slightly better than last year, right? And that's pretty tough to say. We lost Desmond King. We lost, Casey Hayward. But I do see, out the old, in with the new, and I'm seeing a lot of potential out of this group. So I'm going to say slightly better, but maybe with some concerns when it comes to depth on this team, okay? Now, the last position group to talk about, and again, this is going to be one of the most biggest and most impactful additions to this team this year. We're going to talk about safety, featuring Derwin James, Nasir Adderley, Alohi Gilman, Mark Webb, and I think Ben DeLuca is still fighting for a spot on the roster right now too, right? Not a lot of names, but the names that are on there, very high impact player. The return of Derwin James cannot be understated. How many videos I've put out about this? The return of Derwin James is going to change the face and the operation of this defense. This defense has already undergone huge changes over the offseason with head coach Brandon Staley, new schemes and stuff like that. But the way Derwin James is about to hit the field, the way that he's going to be utilized, the way that they're going to feature him on this team is going to be a big impact. So the return of Derwin James cannot be understated. He's going to be one of the biggest playmakers on this entire team. Now, Nasir Adderley on the opposite side at free safety, he should see some improvements as well playing with Derwin James. Because you guys imagine that? He has not played with Derwin James very much in his career, if at all. So now it's time for him to see more opportunities to make plays, because with Derwin on the field comes more opportunities for Nasir Adderley to make something happen. That should benefit him as well. Derwin being back benefits, I would say, every position on this team, because Derwin's going to be playing everywhere. As for the backups in Gilman, Webb, DeLuca, these guys look pretty good. I would fully expect Gilman and Webb to make the team. DeLuca will have to wait and see. Webb is turning heads at camp. Gilman looks like he's improving, but again, the depth could be a little bit better. But my verdict for this unit in comparison to last year is vastly better because of Derwin James. Okay? So my question to you guys in the comments section below, who are some players you think takes the next step, takes the leap, and creates, you know, a more positive regression for their position group for the Chargers in 2021? Who do you see as standing out? There's a lot of rookies this season that are definitely going to be contributing to their position groups. Josh Palmer, Slater, of course, Asante Samuel Jr. I think this may end up being one of the better, you know, draft classes for the Chargers in a long time, but maybe guys outside of that too. I know some guys are really high on Kyler Fackrell, you know, Chris Rump. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to see. So in the comment section, let me know your guys' predictions as well. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty.